Maya Jackson felt the city's exhaustion in her own bones. It was a deep, grinding weariness that settled in her shoulders and behind her eyes, a constant companion since she'd started this new life. Her apartment, a third-floor walk-up in a part of town the guidebooks politely ignored, smelled of damp plaster and her neighbors perpetually cooking cabbage. The floorboards groaned under her feet with a familiar, mournful sigh, as if they too were tired of holding everything up. She stood by the window, a cracked pane patched with duct tape, and watched the gray dawn spill over the rooftops. Another day, another shift. She had exactly $11.42 to her name. The coins were counted out on her small, wobbly kitchen table, next to a half-empty box of generic brand cereal. This was her reality now. A world away from the quiet, studious life she had known. A world away from the grief that still ambushed her in quiet moments. Her mother's passing 6 months ago had been a silent thief, stealing the color from her world. And then, the letter had arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope from a law firm with a name that sounded like old money and leather-bound books. It had informed her that a grandfather she'd never met, a man her mother never spoke of, had passed away and left her everything. Everything, it turned out, was Sterling Corporation, a retail giant with hundreds of stores across the country, a multi-billion-dollar empire. The news had felt like a dream, a fiction. The board of directors, a collection of silver-haired men in bespoke suits, had looked at her, a 28-year-old black woman with a literature degree and a quiet demeanor, with unconcealed skepticism. They saw a child, an outsider. They didn't believe she had the grit, the killer instinct, to lead, so Maya had made them a proposal. "Let me prove it to you," she had said, her voice steady in the cavernous boardroom. "I want to understand this company from the bottom up. I'll go undercover. I'll work in one of your stores. I want to see the truth of it, not just the numbers on a spreadsheet." They had agreed, perhaps thinking it was a naive whim she would quickly abandon. They gave her a new identity, a minimal backstory, and a paycheck that matched the lowest-tier employee. They set her up in this apartment, in this forgotten neighborhood, to work at the Westwood branch, one of their worst-performing, most problematic stores. She had 3 months to live this life before she would be officially announced as the new chief executive officer. She had been here for 2, and the city's exhaustion had become her own. Her hands, once soft from turning pages, were now calloused and dry from breaking down cardboard boxes and stocking shelves. Her back ached from standing for 8 hours straight. She understood, in a way no spreadsheet could ever tell her, the daily, relentless grind of the people who were the foundation of her grandfather's empire. She saw their struggles, their quiet dignity, and the casual cruelties they endured. She pulled on her uniform, a cheap polyester polo shirt with the Sterling logo stitched over the heart. The fabric was scratchy against her skin. She looked at her reflection in the small, cloudy mirror in the bathroom. The woman looking back was tired. Her eyes were shadowed, but they were clear. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, a constant, gentle hum beneath the noise of her new life. "Kindness costs nothing, Maya," she used to say, her hands busy braiding Maya's hair. "But its value is infinite. Never forget that." She hadn't forgotten. It was the one piece of her old life she clung to fiercely. When Maria, a single mother working the register, forgot her lunch, Maya split her own meager sandwich without a second thought. When Mr. Henderson, an elderly man with a trembling gait, couldn't reach the canned peaches on the top shelf, Maya not only got them down, but walked with him through the store, helping him find everything on his list. She learned the names of the regulars, the worries of her co-workers, the subtle rhythms of the store. She grabbed her worn-out sneakers, the soles thinning dangerously, and a single, slightly bruised apple from the fruit bowl. That and a cup of lukewarm water would be her breakfast. As she locked the door behind her, the smell of cabbage seemed to follow her down the stairs. Outside, the air was cool and damp. Her car, a 20-year-old sedan that rattled like a can of loose bolts, was parked at the curb. It took 3 tries for the engine to turn over, coughing and sputtering into life like an old man waking from a deep sleep. The drive to work was a familiar landscape of cracked pavement and shuttered storefronts. She was tired. She was hungry. She was, in this moment, profoundly alone. But she was not broken. This experience, as grueling as it was forging something in her, a resolve as hard as steel. She was not just learning about her company. She was learning about the world it inhabited and the people it was supposed to serve. And she was seeing, with painful clarity, all the ways it was failing them. Pulling into the employee parking lot of the Westwood Sterling Mart, she saw him. He was a fixture, a silent sentinel at the edge of the property. His name was Samuel. He was a man made of angles and shadows, with a grizzled beard and eyes that held a distant, sorrowful light. He never panhandled, never spoke unless spoken to. He just sat on a flattened cardboard box, his few possessions in a tattered backpack beside him, and watched the world go by. Some of her co-workers called him the Ghost. They spoke about him in whispers, a mixture of pity and fear. They said he was a veteran, that something had broken inside him over there, wherever there was. Maya always made a point to greet him. "Good morning, Samuel," she would say, and he would give a slow, almost imperceptible nod in return. Today, she had nothing to offer him but her greeting. The $11 in her bank account had to last her until payday, and that was still 3 days away. The guilt was a small, sharp stone in her gut. Her mother's words came back to her. Kindness costs nothing. Her smile, her acknowledgement, that was something. It was all she had to give. She clocked in, the machine beeping with electronic indifference. The store was already a hive of activity. The night crew was finishing up, their faces pale with fatigue, and the day shift was bustling in, a wave of forced cheerfulness and caffeine. Her task for the morning was stocking the beverage aisle, cases of soda, juice, and water. Heavy, repetitive work. Her muscles protested, but she pushed through it, finding a rhythm in the motion. Lift, slice, stack, lift, slice, stack. "Hey, new girl!" The voice was sharp, laced with a familiar cynicism. It was Brenda, a woman who had worked at Sterling Mart for 15 years and wore her bitterness like a second uniform. "Don't work so hard. They don't pay you enough to care." Brenda leaned against a pallet of bottled water, chewing her gum with a weary aggression. "It needs to get done," Maya replied simply, hoisting another case. "Yeah, well, it'll need to get done tomorrow, too," Brenda scoffed. "And the day after that. Take my advice. Do the bare minimum. Anything more and they just expect more, especially when a shark like Thompson is circling." Mr. Thompson. The name was spoken like a curse in the break room. He was the regional manager, a man with a reputation for cruelty and an ego as vast and empty as the store's cavernous ceilings. He conducted surprise inspections that were less about improving the store and more about terrorizing the staff. He would stride through the aisles, his expensive shoes clicking on the linoleum, pointing out flaws with a vicious glee. He was known for firing people on the spot for the smallest infractions. A crooked name tag, a dusty shelf, a less than enthusiastic greeting. Is he coming today? Maya asked, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Heard a rumor, Brenda said, her eyes scanning the front of the store. He likes to show up mid-morning, right when the first rush is over, so he can cause the most chaos. Just keep your head down and your mouth shut. And whatever you do, don't let him see you talking to the ghost out front. He hates that guy. Swears he's bad for business. The warning lingered in the air long after Brenda had moved on. Maya continued her work, but a part of her mind was now outside, with the silent man on the cardboard box. Bad for business. The phrase was ugly, dehumanizing. Samuel wasn't a profit-loss statement. He was a person. Her break came at 10. She went to the break room, a small, windowless space that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. She had no lunch to eat, so she just filled her water bottle from the cooler. As she stood there, she overheard two of her co-workers, young men from the produce department, laughing. "Did you see those kids messing with the homeless guy?" one of them said. "They were throwing pebbles at him." "Yeah, serves him right," the other chimed in. "Why doesn't he just get a job? He's a creep, just sitting there staring all day." Maya's blood ran cold. She walked out of the break room and to the front of the store. Through the big glass windows, she could see the scene. Two teenagers, emboldened by their own cruelty, were taunting Samuel. They were tossing small rocks near his feet, laughing as he flinched. Samuel didn't react, didn't look at them. He just seemed to shrink into himself, making himself smaller, as if hoping to disappear entirely. Customers walked by, some shaking their heads, others pretending not to see. No one was intervening. Have you ever seen a person's dignity being stripped away, piece by piece, while the world just watches? Brenda's warning echoed in her head. Don't get involved. It's not worth your job. Thompson could be here any minute. Getting involved would be like painting a target on her back. She could lose this job, this identity. It could jeopardize her entire plan. She hesitated, her feet rooted to the floor. Fear was a cold hand gripping her heart. But then she saw Samuel's face. He finally looked up, not at the boys, but out at the traffic, and in his eyes, she saw a profound and bottomless despair. It was the look of a man who had given up, and in that moment, Maya knew she couldn't walk away. Her mother's voice was no longer a whisper. It was a command. Kindness is a choice, Maya. It's the only choice that matters. She pushed through the automatic doors, the cool air of the store giving way to the humid morning. Her heart was pounding. She ignored the teenagers. She walked directly to the vending machine by the entrance. The $11 in her account. It was her gas money, her food money. It was everything she had. She took out her debit card, her hand shaking slightly, and bought a bottle of water and a small package of crackers. The machine whirred, and the items dropped with a hollow thud. She walked over to Samuel. The teenagers paused their assault, watching her with curious, mocking eyes. Maya knelt, not on the dirty pavement, but close enough to be on his level. She held out the water and crackers. "Samuel," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I thought you might be thirsty." He looked at her, his eyes widening in surprise. He seemed stunned that someone was speaking to him, seeing him. He slowly reached out a hand, his fingers calloused and trembling, and took the items. He didn't speak. He just gave that same slow nod. But this time, it was different. It was filled with a gratitude so immense it was heartbreaking. "Get a load of this," one of the teenagers sneered. "She's feeding the animals." Maya stood up, turning to face them. She wasn't angry. She was just sad. He's a human being, she said, her voice even, and he deserves to be treated with respect. Whatever, lady, the other boy said, rolling his eyes. They seemed to lose interest, their fun spoiled, and they swaggered off toward the bus stop. Maya felt a small wave of relief, but it was short-lived. A shadow fell over her, a voice, cold and sharp as broken glass, cut through the air. What exactly do you think you are doing? She turned, and there he was, Mr. Thompson. He was just as they described him. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her car, with a sneer permanently etched on his face. He radiated an aura of privilege and impatience. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, were fixed on her, filled with disgust. Behind him, through the glass doors, Maya could see the faces of her co-workers. Brenda was there, shaking her head in a gesture that said, "I told you so." The two boys from produce were watching, their smirks gone, replaced by a nervous anticipation. A small crowd of customers had stopped to see what the commotion was about. This was it, the moment of confrontation. "I asked you a question, employee." Thompson bit out the last word like it was an insult. He glanced down at her name tag. "Maya, what is the meaning of this spectacle?" "I was on my break, Mr. Thompson," Maya said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I was offering this man some water." Thompson let out a short, incredulous laugh. It was a cruel sound. "Offering him water? You are actively encouraging this filth to loiter on company property. Do you have any idea what this does to our brand? We are a respectable establishment, not a soup kitchen for vagrants." He took a step closer, invading her personal space. He looked from her to Samuel, who was now clutching the water bottle like a lifeline. His head bowed. "This creature is a blight. He scares away customers. He lowers the tone of the entire shopping center. And you," he said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl as he turned his full attention back to Maya, "are encouraging him. This is a direct violation of company policy regarding public conduct." "He wasn't bothering anyone," Maya said, her resolve hardening. "Some boys were throwing things at him. He needed help." "He needs to be removed," Thompson snapped. "And you need to learn your place. Your job is to stock shelves and smile at paying customers. It is not to play savior to the dregs of society on company time and company property." He was projecting his voice now, performing for the audience that had gathered. He was making an example of her. "It was my break," she repeated, her chin lifting slightly. "And my own money. It has nothing to do with the company." This seemed to enrage him further. How dare she talk back? How dare this low-level minimum wage worker challenge his authority? A dark flush crept up his neck. "Your attitude is the problem," he shouted, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "It's insubordinate, it's unprofessional, and it is utterly unacceptable." He pointed a finger at her face, his hand trembling with rage. "You think you know better than me? You, with your worn-out shoes and your bleeding heart? You are a liability. I am the regional manager for Sterling Corporation, and I have built my career on excellence and maintaining standards. Standards you clearly know nothing about." He took a dramatic step back, his chest puffed out. "You're fired, Maya," he declared, the words ringing out for all to hear. "Effective immediately, for gross misconduct and a frankly disgusting attitude. Now get your personal effects and get off my property." The humiliation was a physical blow. It washed over her in a hot, sickening wave. Her cheeks burned, The eyes of the crowd felt like 100 tiny needles on her skin. She could hear someone snicker. She saw the pity in Maria's eyes, the cold satisfaction in Brenda's. They were all watching her being torn down, and they were all silent. She was completely, utterly powerless. Thompson wasn't finished. He wanted to break her completely. He ripped his own gold-plated pen from his pocket. "I'm going to make sure your file is flagged," he snarled. "You'll never work for this corporation or any respectable retailer in this city ever again. I'll see to it personally." He then turned his venom on Samuel. "And you!" he screamed, kicking at the cardboard box Samuel was sitting on. "Get out of here! I'm calling the police. I'll have you arrested for trespassing, you worthless parasite." Samuel flinched, scrambling to gather his meager belongings. The water bottle Maya had given him rolled onto the pavement with a plastic clatter. The sight of that man, a veteran, a human being cowering in fear because of this tyrant, it broke through Maya's shock. It ignited a fire in her. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear calm. She did not cry. She did not beg. She stood up straight, her back rigid, and met Mr. Thompson's furious gaze with an unwavering stillness. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift in the dynamic. Thompson seemed taken aback by her lack of a hysterical reaction. He expected tears. He expected pleading. He did not expect this quiet defiance. "You are making a very big mistake, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice low and steady. It carried a weight that seemed impossible for a woman who had just been so thoroughly humiliated. Thompson laughed again, that same ugly sound. "Oh, am I? I don't think so. The only mistake here was hiring you in the first place. Now get out before I have you escorted out with him." Maya didn't move. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her worn jeans and pulled out her phone. It was a simple, inexpensive model she'd been using for her undercover role. The screen was slightly cracked. Thompson scoffed at the sight of it. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. She pressed a single number on her speed dial. She put the phone to her ear. The crowd watched, mesmerized. What was she doing? Calling her mom? A lawyer? It was a pathetic, futile gesture. The phone was answered on the first ring. Maya's voice was calm and professional. "David," she said, "it's time. I'm at the Westwood branch. Please come to the front entrance and bring Mr. Sterling with you." She hung up. She didn't say another word. She just stood there, waiting. Thompson's face was a mask of confusion and contempt. "David? Mr. Sterling? What is this? Some kind of pathetic bluff? Are those your imaginary friends? Are you crazy as well as insubordinate?" He was trying to regain control of the scene, but a sliver of uncertainty had crept into his voice. Her composure was unnerving. Less than 2 minutes passed. It felt like an eternity. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the nervous shuffling of the crowd. Then they heard it. The purr of a high-end engine, a sleek black town car, the kind that whispers of money and power, pulled silently to the curb right in front of the commotion. The car was so out of place in the cracked asphalt parking lot that it looked like it had been dropped from another planet. The back door opened. A man in a perfectly tailored navy suit stepped out. He was Asian American, with sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a leather briefcase and moved with an air of quiet, unshakable confidence. This was David Chen, chief legal counsel for the Sterling Corporation. Then, the passenger door opened. Another man emerged. He was older, with a mane of distinguished white hair and the posture of a man who was accustomed to being in charge. He wore a gray suit that was a study in understated elegance. His face was known to anyone who followed the business world. He was Arthur Sterling, the chairman of the board, the son of the company's founder, her grandfather's most trusted advisor. The two men didn't even glance at the crowd. Their eyes went straight to Maya. They walked directly to her, their expensive shoes making no sound on the pavement. They stopped in front of her, ignoring Mr. Thompson completely. Arthur Sterling's expression was one of grave concern. "Mrs. Jackson?" he said, his voice a rich baritone that commanded instant respect. "Are you all right?" Mr. Thompson froze. The blood drained from his face. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Mrs. Jackson?" He looked from the powerful, legendary chairman of the board to the fired shelf stalker in her cheap uniform. His mind scrambled to make sense of the impossible scene unfolding before him. The world had just tilted on its axis. "I'm fine, Arthur," Maya replied, her voice regaining its warmth. "Thank you for coming so quickly." Thompson finally found his voice. It was a strangled, croaking sound. Mr. Sterling, what is going on? Who is this?" He gestured weakly toward Maya, his hand shaking. Arthur Sterling turned his head slowly, fixing Thompson with a look of such profound disappointment and icy contempt that Thompson physically recoiled. "You don't know who this is?" Sterling asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "This is Maya Jackson. She is the majority shareholder of this corporation, and as of next month, she is your new chief executive officer." Silence. A deep, profound, absolute silence fell over the parking lot. The crowd held its collective breath. Phones were still recording, but now they were capturing something entirely different. Not the humiliation of a powerless employee, but the spectacular, instantaneous collapse of a petty tyrant. Thompson's face went from pale to a ghastly, waxy gray. His eyes were wide with sheer, unadulterated panic. Sweat beaded on his forehead and upper lip. "No," he whispered. That's not possible. It's a joke. This is some kind of elaborate prank." He looked around wildly, as if expecting to find a hidden camera and a television host ready to jump out and yell, "Surprise!" "I assure you, Mr. Thompson, this is not a joke," David Chen said, his tone as sharp and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. He opened his briefcase and produced a single, crisp document. "This is a copy of the controlling share certificate, bequeathed to Ms. Maya Jackson upon the passing of her grandfather, the founder of this company. Her identity has been thoroughly vetted. Her position is unassailable." Thompson's knees seemed to buckle. He leaned against a nearby shopping cart corral for support. The reality of what he had just done was crashing down on him with the force of a tidal wave. He had not just fired an employee. He had screamed at, insulted, and publicly humiliated the single most powerful person in the entire company. He had done it in front of dozens of witnesses, all of whom were now staring at him with a mixture of shock and dawning delight. "Please," he stammered, his arrogance completely shattered, replaced by a desperate, pathetic pleading. He turned to Maya, his eyes begging for mercy. "Ms. Jackson, I had no idea. I am so sorry. I was having a bad day. I was under a lot of pressure. I didn't mean any of it. Please, I have a family, a mortgage." Maya looked at him, not with hatred, but with a clear, unwavering sense of justice. The woman he had tried to break was now his judge, his jury, his executioner. She remembered the fear in Samuel's eyes, the casual cruelty in Thompson's voice, the sting of her own public shame. Before she could speak, another car pulled up. This one was a standard security vehicle with the Sterling Corporation logo on the side. A large, formidable man in a security supervisor's uniform got out, He nodded respectfully to Mr. Sterling and Maya. Arthur Sterling addressed Thompson again, his voice now booming with authority, leaving no room for argument. Mr. Thompson, your employment with Sterling Corporation is terminated, effective immediately, for gross misconduct and a flagrant violation of our company's code of ethics. Head of Security, Mr. Evans, will escort you to your office to collect your personal belongings. You will then be escorted off the premises. You are not to contact any employees or set foot on any Sterling property ever again. David Chen stepped forward. Furthermore, Mr. Thompson, he added smoothly, at the direction of Ms. Jackson, we will be launching a full and immediate audit of the entire Westwood region under your management. We'll be reviewing every termination, every employee complaint, and every expense report you have ever filed. If we find any evidence of discriminatory practices or financial impropriety, and I have a feeling we will not hesitate to pursue all available legal remedies. Thompson's face crumpled. The threat of legal action, of his whole corrupt career being laid bare, was the final blow. He began to babble, a string of incoherent apologies and excuses. A mistake. Just a misunderstanding. I can fix this. Please give me another chance. It was then that Maya stepped forward. The crowd parted for her as if by magic. She stood before the man who had tried to destroy her, and her voice, though quiet, was filled with an unshakable power that silenced his pathetic whimpering. It wasn't a mistake, Mr. Thompson, she said, her words clear and precise. It was a choice. You made a choice today. You chose to see a man's worth based on the cleanliness of his clothes rather than the content of his character. You chose to treat a human being like he was garbage because you thought no one would stop you. She gestured toward Samuel, who was now standing a short distance away, watching the proceedings with wide, disbelieving eyes. That man you called a parasite, a blight? He deserved your compassion. He deserved our help. At the very least, he deserved basic human decency. You chose to offer him nothing but hatred and scorn. She looked around at the assembled employees and customers, her gaze sweeping over every face. And you chose to build your power by humiliating people you thought were beneath you. You thought I was just a shelf stalker. You thought I was nobody. And so you tried to crush me to make yourself feel big. That is not leadership. That is cowardice. Her final words were a declaration, a promise to everyone listening. This company, the company my grandfather built, will not be a place where that happens. It will not be a place where bullies thrive and good people are punished for showing compassion. Not anymore. That ends today. It ends right now. For a moment, there was a stunned silence. Then, a single person began to clap. It was Maria from the checkout counter, tears streaming down her face. Then another person joined in, and another. Within seconds, the parking lot erupted in a wave of thunderous applause and cheers. The people who had passively watched her humiliation were now actively celebrating her triumph. They were applauding her courage, her words, her victory. It was a sound of catharsis, of justice long overdue. Mr. Thompson, utterly defeated, was led away by the head of security, his head bowed in shame. The crowd parted to let him pass, their applause turning into a chorus of jeers and triumphant shouts. The videos being recorded now had their perfect viral ending, the villain getting his just desserts. Brenda, the cynical veteran, was not jeering. She was watching Maya with a look of stunned, absolute awe. She had just witnessed the impossible. With Thompson gone, a sense of calm returned. Arthur Sterling placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "The board will no longer have any skepticism, Ms. Jackson," he said, a proud smile on his face. "You have proven your character and your strength beyond any doubt. Welcome, Madam CEO." David Chen handed her a key fob. "Your official company car, Ms. Jackson. We thought it best to have it delivered." He gestured to the sleek black town car. "Your CEO compensation package is finalized and has been activated. Your previous paychecks from this undercover assignment have been retroactively adjusted to reflect your new salary, and the full amount has been deposited into your account." Maya looked at the key fob in her hand. It felt alien, unreal. Just an hour ago, she had $11 to her name. But she didn't care about the money or the car. Her eyes were on Samuel. She walked over to him, away from the lawyers and the executives. The applause died down as people watched. Samuel was still standing by the curb, looking overwhelmed. He had picked up the water bottle she had given him. "Are you all right, Samuel?" she asked gently. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the hardship. She saw intelligence and a deep, wounded pride. He cleared his throat, his voice rough from disuse. "My name is Sergeant Samuel Vance," he said, his posture straightening instinctively, a ghost of military bearing returning to him. "United States Army, retired." "It's an honor to meet you, Sergeant Vance," Maya said, with genuine respect. "No one should ever treat you the way that man did. I want to help you." In the days that followed, Maya's life transformed. But more importantly, she began to transform the lives of others. Her first official act as CEO was not in a boardroom, but in a small office with David Chen and a team of social workers. She learned Samuel Vance's story. He was a decorated hero who had served 2 tours. He had come home with injuries both visible and invisible. The system had failed him. He had lost his job, his home, and his hope. He was one of thousands. Maya, using her own personal funds from her inheritance, established a multi-million-dollar foundation. She called it the Vance Foundation, dedicated to providing comprehensive support for homeless and at-risk veterans. It would offer housing, job training, mental health counseling, and a community of support. She didn't just put his name on it. She asked Sergeant Vance to serve on its board of directors, offering him a salary, a home, and a new mission. For the first time in years, Sergeant Vance had a purpose. The light returned to his eyes. The audit of Mr. Thompson's region, as predicted, uncovered a cesspool of corruption. He had been embezzling company funds for years, creating ghost employees and falsifying expense reports. More damningly, they found a clear pattern of discriminatory hiring and firing practices. He had systematically targeted minorities and older employees, replacing them with people who wouldn't question his authority. The evidence was turned over to the federal authorities. Thompson faced a slew of charges, including fraud and embezzlement. His wife filed for divorce, his assets were frozen, and his name became synonymous with corporate greed and bigotry. His ruin was absolute, a public spectacle broadcast on the evening news. For the employees of the Westwood branch, life changed overnight. Maya promoted the store manager, a decent man who had been cowed by Thompson's tyranny, to the new regional manager position. She gave every employee at the store an immediate bonus and a substantial raise. She called a store-wide meeting, not in a sterile conference room, but in the break room where she had once sat with nothing but a bottle of water. She listened to their concerns, their ideas, their hopes. She saw them not as cogs in a machine, but as human beings. She saw them the way she had seen Samuel. Section 6, months later. The world was a different place for Maya Jackson. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her corner office on the top floor of the Sterling Corporation headquarters. The city sprawled out beneath her, a glittering tapestry of lights and ambition. It was the same city, but her view had changed. She no longer saw just its exhaustion. She saw its potential. She was not the CEO her board had expected. She didn't wear designer dresses or rule with an iron fist. Today, she was in a simple but elegant pantsuit, her hair pulled back professionally. On her desk were not just profit and loss statements, but reports from the Vance Foundation. They had successfully housed over 200 veterans in their first 6 months. They were opening new chapters in 3 other cities. Her first major corporate initiative had sent shockwaves through the retail industry. She had instituted the Sterling Standard, a new company-wide policy. The minimum wage for every single Sterling employee, from the janitors to the cashiers, was raised to $25 an hour. Full health benefits were provided to all, including part-time workers. And a new profit-sharing program meant that when the company did well, every employee received a bonus. The old guard on her board had been aghast. They predicted ruin. They said she was a naive idealist who would run the company into the ground. They were wrong. Employee morale skyrocketed. Turnover rates plummeted to historic lows. Customer satisfaction scores went through the roof. People wanted to work for Sterling, and people wanted to shop there. Profits, against all predictions, had increased by 30%. Her employees' first model was becoming a case study in business schools. Other corporations, under public pressure, were starting to reevaluate their own practices. The video of her confrontation with Thompson had gone viral, viewed hundreds of millions of times around the world. It had sparked a global conversation about corporate culture, prejudice, and the simple power of human decency. Maya Jackson had become an unwilling celebrity, a symbol of quiet strength and righteous justice. She turned from the window as her assistant buzzed. "Ms. Jackson, your 3 o'clock is here." "Thank you, Sarah. Send her in." A young woman entered the office, looking nervous and overwhelmed by the opulence of the room. She clutched a portfolio to her chest. She was there to interview for an internship with the company's new community outreach program. Maya recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same anxiety and uncertainty she had felt herself just a few months ago. Maya smiled warmly, standing up from behind her massive desk and walking around to shake the young woman's hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said. "Please have a seat. Can I get you some water?" The cycle of kindness continued. It was a choice she made every single day. Later that evening, as she was leaving the office building, she saw him. Sergeant Samuel Vance was waiting for her by the entrance. He was no longer the ghost from the parking lot. He was wearing a sharp, clean suit. His beard was neatly trimmed, and he stood with a quiet confidence that was breathtaking to witness. He was on his way to a charity gala where he was the keynote speaker. "Madam CEO," he said, a respectful smile on his face. "Sergeant Vance," she replied, her own smile genuine and bright. "You look ready to inspire some people." "You inspired me first, Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't just give me a hand up. You reminded me that I was someone worth helping." They stood for a moment on the busy city sidewalk, 2 people from vastly different worlds, bound together by a single act of kindness in a forgotten parking lot. The city lights twinkled around them, no longer a symbol of exhaustion, but a promise of all the good that was still left to do. Maya knew her work was just beginning. She had been given a great power, not to build a bigger empire of stores and profits, but to build a bigger empire of decency, respect, and hope. And that was a legacy worth fighting for.